citizen journalism was greatly inspired, by all the opportunities that came up with the internet revolution. So when the internet came to being, and it came with all these platforms for user-generated content like YouTube, and these platforms have been improving and giving people actually a chance to earn as they create content, and giving them a platform. Each and everybody can open a channel on YouTube and actually tell their own stories. So most people actually who find themselves practicing citizen journalism are not actually people who had any interest in becoming journalists. Actually, these are people who are fed up with the way the journalism is being done in their country, in their communities. They feel that they have stories that have not been told over many years, and they need to tell these stories. So these guys are not trained, remember. So they try to look for Hello and good morning to you. My name is Rachael Wainaina, a multimedia platform trainer from Kenya, and I am currently training at Youth Film Platform Africa, that is in film, and I'm also training at Sauti Kenya Program for citizen journalism. And today's topic, as you can see, is what is citizen journalism and what's the difference between traditional media and citizen journalism. And to kickstart my discussion today, I want to tell you that I was a trained journalist before I embarked on filmmaking as a film producer and director. So I know the ethics and everything that is required to carry out the practice of professional journalism, and I'm also very well exposed in film industry as well. So I wanted to start today's session very quick, covering a few quick facts about what's the difference between citizen journalism and the traditional media. And I'm going to go back to history. In the 1990s, in the 1980s, actually, and so many people have asked me this question. Of course, you looked at the media, and if you needed to get your information out there or your story out there, you needed to get a way of working with the media or getting a journalist to come and cover your stories. So that was the way people did things at that time. So there were a few media channels, mediums of communication of different kinds. For instance, when we talk about mediums of communication, we're talking about newspaper. So people, used to write and send their stories to the editor, and it could be clearly indicated that these are letters to the editors that have been selected to be shown in the newspaper. So the citizen and the consumers of news were not participating in creating the news themselves. So basically, that's what used to happen in the mainstream media. Then, when we look at the audiovisual part, of course, there used to be TV news. And for you to have a TV channel, you needed, of course, to get a license, which is the same today from the government. And there are a lot of things and quality standards that are required for you to be able to open up a TV station or to be able even to work for a TV station as a news reporter. Again, in these news stations, we had different departments, different tables. We have the crime stories, we have the human interest stories, then we have the breaking news. All these are different types of news that you find in the mainstream media. Then the other thing that is there is radio. So radio was the audio part, where, of course, when you listen to a story, you just listen to the voice. The radio news are written very differently from TV news because the person writing understands very clearly that the person who is getting the news will digest it by visualizing what you're trying to say. So they write very few words, and accuracy, there's a way the story is structured also in doing professional radio journalism as well. So there are other mediums of communication that were also used, which are mainstream. For instance, there was online news when we came to the 90s, towards the 2000 to 2010. We started graduating slowly into the digital news. You saw newspapers, like for instance in Kenya, we had nation newspapers. You saw the newspapers slowly getting into the online platform, opening their websites, but they were still giving news based on very professional journalistic practices. So in this case, you understand that in traditional media and mainstream media, there are a couple of things that happen there. One, you have to be trained to be a professional journalist, because these are guys who are licensed under certain terms and conditions. And if they don't keep to the rules and terms and conditions agreed thereto, then of course they stand a chance of having their station locked down. So that's one. The other thing that you need to know is that, of course, there's commercial and political pressure in the mainstream media, where, of course, because the person, most of the time, the entity that gives license to the media, like in Kenya, is the government of Kenya. So there's some, standards of reporting that are there that actually, they're like bureaucracies that actually prevent the mainstream media from actually being able to relay all the news that they get. So, of course, we have a lot of untold stories. So the third thing is also, you find that there's also commercial pressure, because some of the free-to-air channels, especially in Kenyan context, where we have many also free-to-air channels, they depend solely on the commercial income from companies. So in this case, if they are required to report something about these stations, it will be a tricky affair trying to report bad things about their customers. Again, so there's a bit of a conflict of interest there. So with so many reasons, that really make the mainstream media not be able to show all the news that they want to show, that's how citizen journalism came into place. It started as guerrilla journalism, where guys were even printing papers with news, and some of them were termed as false news and research news. They were just printing without all the relevant, publishing channels, and authorizations acquired. So, actually, the other thing that defines the traditional media is also the editorial process. Because of all these checks and balances, your story has to be factual. It has to be, backed up by evidence and all that. And facts, you're dealing with facts here. And so in the mainstream media, there's an editorial process. You find a reporter will collect the news. They'll take the news to the newsroom, where the editor will go through the news and decide which news will get published, whether that is the news that will get aired on TV or the news that will get printed on the newspaper. Again, not every news that a news reporter will bring will be aired. There's a lot of in-house also editorial standards in each and every media house that dictates how this news comes out. Again, that's another issue that should be looked into, so that you get to understand the traditional media. The other thing is that, of course, there's even other things like community journalism, which is still practiced, even civic journalism, which is actually practiced by very qualified journalists who are looking at the issue of early child marriages and all that. Again, that is not citizen journalism. So that brings me to the point what is citizen journalism? As the word dictates, citizen journalism is divided into two parts. So the first part is citizen. Remember, citizen was originally actually a consumer of news, not a writer of news. So the citizen is practicing journalism without being trained for it. That's what you're calling citizen journalism. Some people, they will call it other words like a journalism activity being undertaken by an amateur. And citizen journalists don't only write news, even get themselves involved as reporters. They also edit their news, and they have their mediums of distribution. And that brings me to the next point. Citizen journalism was greatly inspired, by all the opportunities that came up with the internet revolution. So when the internet came to being, and it came with all these platforms for user-generated content like YouTube, and these platforms have been improving and giving people actually a chance to earn as they create content, and giving them a platform. Each and everybody can open a channel on YouTube and actually tell their own stories. So most people actually who find themselves practicing citizen journalism are not actually people who had any interest in becoming journalists. Actually, these are people who are fed up with the way the journalism is being done in their country, in their communities. They feel that they have stories that have not been told over many years, and they need to tell these stories. So these guys are not trained, remember. So they try to look for any means to tell their story. They also try to get an audience to their story. So actually, this is user-generated content in simple terms, because you find when you come to citizen journalism, what the mainstream media considers as news is not what the citizen journalists also consider as news. So we have very different ways of looking at news, especially from a citizen perspective. The citizen will consider news something that should have been told but has not even been covered by the mainstream media. And we've seen cases of citizen journalism happening. For instance, when the media was not able to cover the protests, the Black Lives Matter protest. So people are using their phones, recording what's happening and reporting through social media pages. The protest was also being broadcasted live. So that is citizen journalism. You're taking over, it should be a live TV coming there to cover this news, but you're taking over that part and actually broadcasting it yourself. So that's what we call citizen journalism. So the internet, of course, played a major role in giving birth to many platforms that allow people to self-publish themselves. Nowadays, we all have Facebook pages, we have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have LinkedIn, we have YouTube. That is social media. So people use a lot of social media, even Vimeo, and among many other platforms. They use those platforms as platforms of airing their views, of airing their stories. All right. Then the second thing is, of course, there are those also who actually use citizen journalism to create awareness of a particular problem so that the media, the mainstream media, which has resources, can also be inspired to come and work on the same story. So some of the main channels, biggest channels in our countries today, depend on citizen journalists. They look at Twitter, they look at Facebook, they know that there's a traffic jam somewhere, and then they go there to cover the jam. But actually, the citizens already reported it first. All right? So when citizens get engaged in telling the story, now that's where we get into, citizen journalism. And of course, we've actually mentioned that actually, citizen journalism is inspired by the fact that there's so many important untold stories in our communities. We need to tell these stories. So even if we don't know how to do so much, nowadays you can use your mobile phone to tell your story. You can actually go live on different apps like StreamYard, like Facebook, and be able to tell your story. Okay? So who are citizen journalists? These are normal citizens who take up the responsibility of telling stories which they consider as important to them and to their communities. So to do citizen journalism, what actually has happened, and this has also been triggered mainly by the internet, is that the internet has tried to create an alternative platform for each of the main tools of multimedia. When you talk about the tools, professional tools of mass communication, we're talking about one, newspapers. So nowadays, newspapers have been replaced online with blogs. So the tool of citizen journalism is a blog. You can create a free blog online and be able to share your written stories of any kind, whether you want to do breaking news, political interest stories, or you just want to write stories of heroes in your community, or you want to highlight the challenges happening in your community. You can be able to create your own blog today and actually be able to go ahead and use the blog to reach a lot of audience with a story that you think has not been covered in the main media. So that's one. Also, the newspapers today have also created an opportunity for people to continue writing letters to the editor, where citizens can also contribute with their views and their views can get published in the newspapers. Again, that is citizen journalism. You're not trained for it, but you just feel that you need to air your opinion. Radios as mediums of communication, those are professional, have been replaced today with podcasts. People are creating their own podcast online, which they're using to actually, as radio. In short, like they relay their audio messages, their audio news through podcast. Again, that's another platform that is available on the internet that's helping people further distribute their stories and tell their stories. Other people, in the mainstream media, there was TV news. Now the TV news has also been complemented online with, of course, we have now the user-generated channels like YouTube, like Vimeo, among many other platforms, which now you can use, even Facebook, which you can use to actually relay audiovisual messages in form of news. You can even go live. You can even broadcast live from a location where something is happening and involve people in commenting about it. That's how far we've gone with technology when it comes to citizen journalism. Then also there are other tools like, of course, for newspapers, if you don't use blogs, you can also use website. You can create your own website where people can be getting news. They can even subscribe and be paying a monthly fee to just actually come and read the content in your citizen journalism work. Then also we have film. Nowadays people are using film because there's YouTube making short films, because there's some topics that are so sensitive that especially people in activism and advocacy want to tell. You want to talk about countering violent extremism. You don't have the resources to do a proper investigative story like what a mainstream media journalist would do. Then what you do is that story, you reenact it in form of film and use a film as a tool of citizen journalism. But how do you make your film? Because you're not a trained filmmaker. People are making films nowadays using their phones. Our phones are now full HD. Like the phone I'm using to record this is a full HD, which means actually anything I record on this phone can actually go on TV as it is. It's 1920 by 1080. So that's good quality. Again, people are going to this extent to actually be able to tell their stories. People are making documentaries. People are making dramas. People are even using other tools such as theater and all that, recording it and sharing it on the online space. So all these are different tools that are now available, where you can just record something with your phone, reenact it, whether it's fiction or whether it's a documentary. You can actually use your phone without being trained, as long as you know how to just take a photo or a video. You can do something small like a film, and people will be able to follow it up. So then you'll have told your story and what is happening in your communities. You'll get an audience looking at your work. Actually, some of the platforms I think that really tested this idea of citizen journalism, one of it was CNN, iReport. I remember we had a meeting with one of the executives at CNN on 2012. Her name was Lila King, and she was talking to us about how they used to have the iReport session, where, people from around the world could record news clips with their phones in their community, post them on CNN, iReport website, and they would be published. And some of those stories would be selected and shown during the CNN World News. And so you could get your views and your story published on CNN. I think that's a very good thing that they used to do. And I think they really promoted and encouraged people to think, how can we actually be able to get the voices of more people heard? That's very important. So, how to identify what method of citizen journalism you want to use? And of course, you need to get as many skills as possible, because there are different things you want to do. For instance, you want to write and post a photo. You need to find the right tools. Maybe if you want to vlog, you need to research more. There's a lot of education online about vlogging, blogging, and all that. Look at what channels other people are doing. If you're using audiovisual mediums, you need to learn small skills like making sure your lighting is okay, how to stream live, what are the softwares that you can use to stream live. If you're making a film, you need to know how to use your phone to make a short film, how to get the actors, how to direct them a bit, and all these are things you can learn online and self-publish yourself. Remember, a citizen journalist is not somebody who's interested in going to film school or in going to journalism school to learn how to use what they can use. And citizen journalism does not stop there. Photographers use photojournalism for citizen journalism. So if you have a very good phone, you can use your iPhone or your Android phone, take a nice photo, and then write a story below it, and the story can be promoted online and can reach a wide audience. So I hope this was helpful to just sort of introduce you to what citizen journalism is. Who can be a citizen journalist? It's somebody who's not a journalist, or somebody who's not a filmmaker, or somebody who's not even a writer, a professional writer, but they have a story to tell and they don't want to go to school and learn how to do it professionally. They don't want to be regulated in terms of, they want to self-regulate in terms of what story they can publish or what story they cannot publish. So basically, if you're that kind of person and that's what you need, and you feel that there's a gap in your community of a story that you need to tell, then you can be a citizen journalist. And as I conclude, I want us to talk about mobile journalism in the next tutorial that we're going to do, where I'm going to talk to you about now how citizen journalism has turned from just like the web platforms to actually mobile journalism. That's why we have Instagram stories. We have, very instant things that are hidden from a lot of people, but still available to a lot more people. And people are using these tools for journalism. So there's so many opportunities in citizen journalism. I hope this was helpful. I would like to see your feedback below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and give me feedback on our YouTube channel, so that we can actually be able to improve and get better at it. So thank you, and looking forward to the next video that we're going to do. And to the Sauti Kenya program participants who are in advocacy, this is how you can use citizen journalism to further amplify your voice. And to the YP Africa students who are looking to kickstart their careers, this is how you can also use these tools to further make greater campaigns for the films that you're doing and for the work that you're doing, or even in fundraising. So citizen journalism can be used in a lot of ways. So I hope this was helpful and a great opportunity for you to learn some skills that you can use for social self-expression and income generation. Thank you so much. See you in the next tutorial. Cheers.